In this video I'm going to talk about some of my process when it comes to learning how to play by ear. I learned how to play by ear a long time ago as a kid. I didn't get lessons till I was 12 on the piano, and then I got into flute, and then later on I got into harp, and so that's been a lot of fun. Music is a beautiful language, and it can take you all sorts of places, and but some people, they'll ask me, how do you play by ear? And so one thing that stood out to me in college when I took a music class was learning how, at least for a long time in Africa, I don't know how it is today, but for a long time in the history of Africa, that's how people would learn how to play music. They didn't have sheet music. They learned by ear. And so that kind of made me realize, okay, so it is a learned skill. It's something that you can learn. It's not just this magical ability that you're born with or you're not born with. It's definitely something that you can learn, something that you can cultivate through time, and it's kind of like any kind of muscle, kind of like creative muscle, or how some people learn how to sing a note when they read the sheet music. They're like, oh, that's this note, and sing it. And I'm not there yet. I haven't learned how to do that exactly, but for me, it's one thing for me is that I feel like I've caught on to recognizing the relationship between notes and how they work together. And so one thing that I like about playing by ear is that, and also just, improv, playing around, experimenting with an instrument, is that you learn a lot more than if you're just playing sheet music. So, because with sheet music, it's just telling you exactly what to play, and if you're only using sheet music and you're not experimenting, you're not playing around on the piano or whatever instrument you're playing, it can be really difficult to feel comfortable going outside of the lines, or you might feel uncomfortable playing different notes than what sheet music says, and even if the sheet music is wrong. Because sometimes, there's sheet music out there for songs that are existing, and some of the notes are not exactly right. It's like, hey, that's not how it sounded, So playing by ear, learning by ear can be helpful for some of that too, of this is how it sounded in the movie, or this is how it sounds in the original song. And so that can be a really helpful skill. And sheet music, of course, has its benefits as well, having something in front of you so that even if your mind goes blank, you have something in front of you that you can read and you can play. Whereas with playing by ear, you definitely have to memorize it. You have to be able to hear it in your head. It's like, okay, how did that go? And so that goes into also, some people, I don't know exactly, how everyone's head works, but I know that, just like some people may not have the ability to visualize things as well, some people might not actually hear music in their head. I'm not sure if there's an actual statistic on that out there, but that's just something that I've, thought about. And so if you're the sort of person who, you listen to music in your head, like, your head plays music, then that's part of being able to play by ear, or at least that's how it's one way that's helped me, because sometimes when I sit down and I try to pick out a song, I don't always have the song playing right there with me, although sometimes if I can't remember a song, I'll pull it out and I'll be playing it, and then I'll pause it and okay, that sounded like, and so and then so you play it back, and so you kind of have to figure out, was that note, was that not that note, and the more you practice, the more you get better at it, and so yeah, so that's one of the things about learning by ear. Now, another thing when learning by ear, and also just with music in general, sometimes you find a song that's so complicated, it's like, how do you even start to figure out what is going on in this song? Whether it has so many instruments, or, if you're trying to learn it by ear, or if you have really crazy sheet music that goes all over the place. It's like, I don't know how to start. And so one of the things you can do is you can learn how to simplify it. Now, this is kind of broken into a few different steps. So one thing for me, like for instance with hearing a movie score or movie soundtrack, and I'm like, oh, that's so pretty, I want to play that. So one of the things I'll do is I'll try to figure out what in that song stands out to me the most. Like, is it a clear melody? Like, and that's from Inkheart. A great movie, great book. But anyway, so, you know, or is it the chords, you know, like, and sometimes the chords are part of the melody too, so that's also part of it. And so that's kind of how you get started with learning how to play by ear, is like, okay, start with the melody and like try to catch the melody, or start with the chords and then kind of put it together, see what you can do. And because once you find one, then it's easier to find the other one. And this is a side note, but sometimes if I'm not listening to the song right next to me as I'm trying to pick it out, then sometimes I will accidentally transpose it into an easier to play key than the original song. Because like, I think in terms of the relationship between notes. And so, because, you know, any song can be changed into any key, basically, and, you know, it sounds the same because the notes are connected to each other. Of course, you know, some people can tell the difference between different keys, but for me, I notice more so the relationship between the notes rather than the particular pitch of a note. And it's like, oh, that's E minor. No, I'm not exactly that skilled at that. But so I wouldn't be able to tell you that just from hearing something. I wouldn't be able to be like, oh, that's E minor. No, I wouldn't be able to. I'd be like, oh, that's a minor key, and that's kind of like this, and so I could pick out that much, you know. And so yeah, and so then another part of it, so going on from, you know, catching either the chords or the top is, so like for instance, with sheet music or even with, you know, just picking something out by ear, sometimes an interval will be, you know, too long for your fingers, and it's like, okay, how do I can't reach down there, so maybe I'll do this, something like, so instead of, you know, trying to reach all the way down there, you can bring it up. And so when you do that, that's kind of another skill that you learn is, like I've been saying, the relationship between notes. Like for instance with C, you find out what chords go well with the note C. So it's like, but also like the different versions of a C chord. And forgive me if I'm not using proper music theory names and terms. I'm not classically trained in music theory, but I do know a few things here and there. But anyway, so yeah, like the relationship between all these notes, like, okay, so these are the different versions of a C chord, but then there you could also be playing an A minor chord, or different variations of that, or in F major. So like realizing the relationship between notes can help you pick out a song, because it's like, oh, that sounds like, and then you have something to reference from. So that's one thing, that even just playing around with any key, like start with C on the piano because that's so easy and you can just find out relationships between the notes. And then if your song that you're trying to pick out, and if you really want to pick it out in the key that the original song is in, which can be sometimes trickier, especially if you're not familiar with how the notes lay out on the piano, like how many black keys or how many white keys and which white keys and which black keys you're using. And so yeah, it can be a little bit trickier when it's not a key that you're familiar with. And so that can be good to play around with that key of like, oh, okay, it's in like, you know, D major. Let's figure out, okay, so that's these notes here that I can use, and then play around with those notes, and play around with like chords that go along with that key. So, so yeah, those are some things. And then, so yeah, like going from intervals. So that can help you simplify if it's too long an interval, or if the chord is like a huge long arpeggio and you're not quite ready to like do big long arpeggios, you can start out with a smaller arpeggio. Like that's a, you know, something, or a broken chord, like that's easier, you know, and or even just like a flat, you know, chord. So you can start there, you know, start simple. So that's one of the ways to simplify like the chord side. And now with the melody side, if there's like so many notes, it's like, ah, that's a lot of notes. So a few things that you can sort of do. Now, it's a little bit harder to simplify a melody because, of course, you know, that's how the song rings out. That's how people recognize the song. And so in some ways, you know, for in a lot of ways, you might not be able to really simplify, but like, if it had like a whole bunch of runs, like, you know, it goes like, you know, all sorts of runs and things like that, you might be able to like skip a few notes, but I would recommend this more so when practicing it, and not, and like, just to get, you know, an idea, and maybe not even do that, I don't know. Don't listen to me on that last one. I'm not positive on that. But like, I think too, because like, for instance, certain like Final Fantasy songs, or like there's just a lot going up in the upper range where it's not necessarily a main melody, there's just a lot going on. So that's where I would recommend, you know, being able to leave out some notes, or because, you know, there's so many instruments, you can't play everything. You only have two hands, unless you play over yourself and you're recording, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, I wouldn't like leave out notes unless it's more so like, oh, there's all these different instruments playing different things, and then you would try to find clarity of like, okay, well, what's the most important set of notes to keep in within that, you know, that beautiful mess. Not mess, but, you know, that beautiful collection of notes there, you know, what's the most important thing to keep. And so yeah, you know, and as you kind of learn more, you kind of notice, okay, there's an easy way to play the song and a more difficult way to play the song. Like, just like with Chim Chimney, you know, there's an easy way to play it, and then there's some really gorgeous ways to play it on piano. So I hope that's helpful, and yeah. Have a good one.